You've probably seen this video of this guy who took a picture every day from age 12 to when he was married. And he also made a tutorial of how he lined up his eyes manually for every single day. And I wanted to do the same thing. And I actually have been taking pictures for over a year, but I didn't really want to do it manually. And recently, I figured out a way in DaVinci Resolve to easily and automatically line up all my eyes, and it actually does it better than if I did it manually. So let me show you how to do this. First, before you try to do this, you're pretty much required to have somewhat consistent photos. Now, recently I've started being very consistent with my photos. You can see they're pretty much all in the same location, the same lighting, same angle, but it's not what I used to do. I used to be very inconsistent. Some days I would be wearing glasses, other days I would be in my car. It was extremely inconsistent. And I actually tried this method on the older photos and it didn't work. So I had to manually do all the older ones up until I started to become more consistent. So once you've got all your photos into DaVinci Resolve, to select all of them, you want to click the last one, scroll all the way up, hold Shift, click the first one, right click, insert selected clips to timeline. And it's going to automatically put all the videos on the timeline. Now, for some reason, the first one, it always only puts on for 1 frame, but the rest are defaulted to 5 seconds long, which obviously wouldn't work. Because right now, if I play this video, it's going to take 5 seconds to get through each one. And we want it to be going through fast, maybe 1 or 2 frames per image. So to do this, the fastest way I know how to do this is by using your arrow keys and a ripple delete feature within DaVinci Resolve. So there is this ripple delete, which I've set to W on my keyboard. So when I press W, what it's basically doing is cutting a clip all the way down to wherever my playhead is and then deleting the empty space. But I can do that in 1 click with W. W, right arrow, W, right arrow, W, right arrow, and so on. Now, if you don't have that enabled, you can go to keyboard customization up at DaVinci Resolve and then keyboard customization. Then you want to type in this search bar end to playhead and it'll come up with trim and then 3 options. You want to go into ripple. Within ripple, you'll see end to playhead, and this was the default shift command close bracket, but I also set W. Now there's another one called start to playhead, which technically you won't need for this tutorial, but you also want to set this one up. So basically first you want to set up end to playhead to key W. Now you want to also type in start to playhead. You'll have the same options, open up ripple, start to playhead. I selected it to Q. So Q and W are right next to each other on my keyboard. So now I can use Q to cut the beginning of the clip off, and I can use W to cut the end of a clip off to wherever my playhead is. So if I wanted this to be about 1 second long, I could put my playhead at 1 second and hit W, and it would cut off the end and delete the empty space. So basically, you want to do that for every single clip. If anybody knows a faster way to do this, comment below, but all I'm doing is hitting right arrow key, W, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And eventually, I actually cheated and pre-made this. You'll get to this, where every single clip is 1 frame long. You could also do this for 2 frames. This is a little bit fast. I kind of like it this fast, but you could have it 2 frames long so that it's not quite as fast. And by the way, my timeline is set to 30 frames per second. Next, what we're going to want to do is track our eyes. Now, I ran into some crashing issues where DaVinci Resolve would crash when I tried to track a lot of these images at a time. So we're only going to do it by sections. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, remember I said these older ones that were inconsistent didn't really track well. So we're going to start from about where I start getting consistent, right about there. Okay, so that's where I start getting consistent, and then the rest are fairly consistent. Those are going to be the easiest to track. So we'll start here, And what you want to do is go over to your effects tab. And if you don't see that, you can go up to the top and click effects. Make sure your toolbox is selected and search adjustment clip. Take your adjustment clip and drag it onto your timeline wherever you want to start tracking. If all your photos were consistent, you can start from the beginning. Now, we also don't want to do a lot at once. I think I could probably do this whole section at one time. I'm going to try it. I have an M2 MacBook Pro and it's pretty good at handling high effort things within video editing. So I'm going to try this, but if it doesn't work for you and you have it crash, just do a shorter clip at a time and you'll just duplicate it and do it over again. So once we have our adjustment clip, you can either right click on it and open in the Fusion page, or you can go down to the bottom and just click the Fusion button. And now we've basically turned all those photos into this one long clip, sort of like a video. So to track our eyes, I'm gonna go up here and open the viewer to full screen. Click on Media In, and then click Shift and Space. That'll open up this tool search feature, and you wanna type in tracker. We're just gonna use this basic tracker. So click on that and click add. And if you had media 1 selected, it'll automatically add the tracker to your node tree. Now we have 2 eyes and we want to track both of them, but we don't want to use the same tracker for both eyes. But what you can do within this tracker node is actually go over to your inspector and click add. And now you see we have 2 trackers. So tracker 1 is going to be for our left eye. So in this inside box, there's this little square in the top left, and you'll click that and drag it over onto your left eye. You'll grab tracker 2 and drag it onto your right eye. Now, on my Mac, I'm able to press Command and scroll down on my trackpad to zoom in. It might be different on PC. On mouse, it should be pretty easy to figure out. We want to make these trackers smaller, but we still want to have pretty much all of our eye in there with a little bit of space around it. More is better than less. I tried to just track the pupil. That didn't work very well. So more is better than a small area. So let's also resize that one, basically centered on our eye. These don't have to be perfect. And basically once you do that, make sure tracker 1 is selected, because if you don't select it, it kind of gets funky and will flip your head upside down. Once we do that, we can go over to the inspector, and I would say save it at this point. Just save your project so that if it crashes, you can open it back up and your trackers are still in the same place. Go over to your inspector and click track forward from current time. Now it looks like it's doing pretty well. You can kind of see the trackers following the eyes, and also in the inspector, there's this box that shows what it's tracking at each frame, and it looks like it pretty much did it perfectly, and that's thanks to the consistent photos. They don't need to be absolutely perfect, but similar lighting and similar environment and angle are crucial. So now that we've tracked them, the eyes still aren't in the center of the frame every time in the exact location. So what we need to do is go up to our inspector, make sure your tracker is selected, go over to the Operation tab, and switch None to Match Move. Now, by default, it's set to foreground over background. What we want to do instead is select background only. And once we do that, that's pretty much it. Now we can scrub through our video and see that our eyes are perfectly aligned, just like that. I mean, that took a few minutes to explain, but once you get the hang of it, you could do this in minutes, less than a minute probably per section. So now we look through there, and it is perfectly aligned. It is so satisfying, especially when it's consistent. When you've got consistent photos, it looks so satisfying. And this is probably 100 photos that we did all at once. And if you have a machine that can handle it, you can do big sections like this, and it's so much faster than doing it manually. So I think that's pretty much it. If you're gonna do sections, what you wanna do is grab another adjustment clip. And I'm gonna quickly go in here. You can hover over this adjustment clip, go into Fusion, and we're basically gonna make 2 dots to help align our eyes. So we're gonna open this tool search with Shift Space, type in S ellipse, click it and click Add. Now it doesn't connect to the node tree because we need a shape renderer. So we'll hit Shift Space and click S Render, type in S Render, add that, it automatically connects, and then we'll grab this gray square, drag it over to the white square of media in, and it merges it. Now we want to resize this ellipse to be really small. So right now it's set to 0.5. We're going to set it to 0.005. Do the same thing for the height. Now we have this teeny tiny dot. Okay, it's not really that small once we zoom in, but that's kind of a good size for our eyes. So let's now change the X offset to 0.025, actually negative 0.025. And then we'll increase the Y offset to 0.015. Now we'll do the same thing with another ellipse, but basically to easily do this fast, we can just copy this with Control or Command C and Control or Command V. It copies it for us. If we select our second ellipse, we can change this negative 0.25 to positive, and now we've got these two dots. Now the reason we did this, let's go back to the edit page, is because if we're going to take multiple adjustment clips and do this twice because our computer couldn't handle it, so we had to retrack another section, this is going to be slightly misaligned from this adjustment clip. Now, a good example would be if we just pretend like we tracked. If we zoom in, we can see that all these eyes are aligned, but then when we get to the other adjustment clip, the eyes are slightly off, okay? But we have these white dots. So as long as we align this first adjustment clip with these dots, then we can align this one and all the rest. So this is good to have on top of all your footage so that each section can be aligned perfectly, and you can always disable this video track so those white dots aren't on your eyes. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have questions in the comments.